What's up, y'all? Happy Friday. Welcome into another edition of DNVR Rams Live, presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. If you're tuned in live on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, say good morning in the Toyota chat, all that fun stuff. If you're listening later on, say what's up in those comments. I realize you can comment like on Spotify and stuff now. That's kind of neat. We've got a loaded show for you today, a ton to dive into. Transfer news, we'll preview the UNM matchup. We'll go down memory road a little bit, reminisce about a winning streak over the Lobos that has been pretty crazy, close to 16 years since CSU last lost to New Mexico. Feels like that streak is coming to an end on Saturday, though. We'll talk hoops, another great performance offensively from the men's basketball team under Ali Farokhmanesh. If you're keeping track at home, we did hit one of our preseason predictions, and that was that Josh Pasquarelli would hit 5 threes in a game. Hit 6 the other night. He is a flamethrower when he gets it going. If you missed my takeaways on the site, go back and check that out. We've had a couple of written pieces on the Hoops team this week. I did a little piece on Kyle Jorgensen and his breakout this season. I've had takeaways after all the games, so don't miss that. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun to cover that Hoops team. It's been a bit of a much-needed change of pace after the first 75% of this football season, which has been a drag. Shout out to the women's team, CSU women's basketball. Big-time win in Spokane last night. Took down Gonzaga 70-66. Outscored the Zags by 10 in the fourth quarter, which was definitely encouraging. I wasn't able to watch that game live because I was on Avs duty. Shout out to Azare in the Toyota chat showing some love, one of our most dedicated Avs fans. Appreciate her tuning in with us today. Shout out to our guy Aaron as well. I wasn't able to watch the game live because I was doing Avs stuff, but I do want to commend the program. I've been critical of CSU women's basketball under Ryan Williams the last couple of years. I feel like coaching has maybe limited the ceiling of the program because there has been talent. I mean, you look at some of the top end players that have come through in the last 5 years. Obviously, last year was especially disappointing given that you had both Ron Six sisters and weren't even able to make it to the Mountain West Championship game. But this is a team that does have some talent. They had 4 double-digit scores last night. They closed strong in a tough environment. Gonzaga hadn't lost a home opener in over 2 decades. To pull that out on the road is a big time win, and now a couple of wins over future Pac-12 programs for Ryan Williams in the last couple of non-conference slates. Beat Oregon State and Gonzaga last year. I mean, it's been nice to at least see the team rise up for a couple of these big time performances. Great win from them. Before I talk about Jalen Dupree entering the portal, if you missed that, I broke that news yesterday. I think Kevin Lytle had it shortly after. I mean, we all have a lot of similar sourcing on this stuff, so unsurprising. He does great work. I try and do great work. I did want to give just a couple of thoughts on the latest rumor mills regarding the CSU football coaching vacancy. A couple of days ago, unsurprisingly, we got some shit stirred up from somebody who frankly has no legitimate sourcing in Fort Collins, and Josina Anderson. She's a national reporter. I don't know Josina. I'm not trying to take any personal shots at her or anything like that, but this seemed very clearly to be an instance of somebody pushing the agenda of an agent. And I've warned you guys repeatedly that you have to take all of those national reports with a grain of salt when it comes to coaching searches. Said the same thing about Gundy. There's a lot of disingenuous actors in this whole process. There's a lot of patting each other on the back. I'll push this for you if you give me this info down the line, all that type of stuff. You honestly have to sell your soul a little bit to be a scoops type reporter in any sport. I mean, the Schefters, the Shams of the world. I mean, you can pretty much just copy and paste whatever an agent is telling them. They're going to tweet it. That's how they keep that pipeline going. It's how they get the access to information. That said, Cordell Stewart in no way is a legitimate candidate for the CSU football job. What has he done that would make him even remotely qualified for the position outside of played football? I mean, I've seen some pretty crazy hypotheticals thrown out there, but to throw a guy out who's not even coached at the high school ranks, like I've made jokes about everyone clamoring for Dave Logan over the years, but to throw out that somebody with zero coaching experience could be a legitimate contender for this. I guess she didn't say contender, has interest in this job. I don't know. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Want to clear that up. That is most certainly not going to be the direction that CSU goes. John Canzano, however, who is well sourced within the Pac-12, especially when it comes to administrators, he reported this morning that CSU has looked into UC Davis head coach Tim Plow, as well as New Mexico head coach Jason Eck. Both of those very, very realistic candidates. I would think Plow doesn't do a ton for me. I don't think he moves the needle enough. Also has me a little bit hesitant just based on his inexperience to this point. I mean, he was a guy who was a good quarterback at UC Davis, but kind of coached his way up there, was at Boise for a while. I think he spent a year at Cal. Has had a nice start. I mean, 16-4 through his first 20 games as a head coach. But when you look at how UC Davis has fared against some of the other, kind of top teams in the FCS, hasn't been awesome. Big game coming up against Montana State. Eck would obviously be a lot of fun. He feels much more in the vein of where I would expect CSU to go, just from a balance of experience and track record, but also the need to make a splash, because you do need to generate some traction with this decision. It's a tough balance to strike. You do want to have substance. You don't want it to just be about the headlines, but you do need to generate some excitement with this program, because it is a disaster, and very quickly the wheels seem to have fallen off. I mean, to think about where CSU football was at coming into the year, coming off of an 8-win year, a team that had talent on paper. I do think injuries were devastating on the defensive side, some wonkiness offensively. Losing Jackson Warren shouldn't have been felt as much as it has been, but you lost your best offensive lineman and Morley, obviously a veteran quarterback leaving the program. Like, there are a lot of factors that have worked against the offense. 3 different play callers, 2 head coaches. It's just been a mess, and now we're starting to see that exodus begin. Sophomore running back Jalen Dupree has left the team. He will not play for the Rams anymore this season. The portal will officially open up 5 days after, whenever CSU football hires their next head football coach. I do like that rule has changed, but very likely that Jalen Dupree has played his last game in the green and gold. It's a bit of a bummer how things have played out with him. I want to start by saying I understand both sentiments that you'll see from the fans in this. I've seen some people be critical and say, finish what you started, don't quit on your teammates. I do understand that sentiment. I've seen other people say, what's the point? He's got a really bright future. Why would you risk injury for a disastrous situation? I think that's really fair as well. He has tried to be loyal, through it all, based on what I've heard. He's definitely a guy that loves being at CSU. I don't think it has anything to do with hating the program or the campus or living in Fort Collins or anything like that. But he is a guy who is frustrated with how he has been used this year. And I've talked a lot about how I didn't really understand what they were doing with him. I do get wanting to lean on the strength of that running back unit as a whole, and trying to spread the love a little bit, and lean on the talent you have there, because it is definitely the deepest position you have offensively. That said, it just felt like every week he would get a couple touches on the first drive, would go for like 8-9 yards a pop on his first carry, rush for like 30 yards on that first drive, and then we wouldn't see him again until halfway through the second quarter or the third quarter or whatever it would be. Maybe they'd close with them, but at that point, they'd be down like 4 scores. I never really understood how he was being used this year. He'll leave CSU 661 yards on 5.2 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns, and 14 career games. I enjoyed my chances to interact with him these last couple of years. Thought he was a really good kid, humble, very driven. I think he's got a very bright future, and I think he's going to be one of those pieces that's tough for Ram fans these next couple years, having to watch him likely tear it up in a different uniform. I would imagine he'll have substantial interest in the Power Four, as will some of the other guys that are going to be leaving. And I mean, he's going to be far from the only person entering the portal, based on what I've heard. We obviously already knew that BFN would be portaling. Now we know that Dupree is portaling. I've heard all the big names. I don't know if it's fair to necessarily throw those guys out there, but if they're a name that you would assume would generate interest in the portal, they're likely entering. And I think we've probably seen the last of Jordan Ross in a CSU uniform as well. It's been a weird situation there. He's been battling injuries. In his defense, I'm not trying to talk trash about him or anything like that. I don't think that he is meshed very well with the interim offensive coordinator, Grant Chestnut. Neither has Dupree, for that matter. That was a big part of this, was Dupree and Chestnut. They clashed in practice. They clashed on the sidelines. And Laramie, when Dupree only got 6 carries and a shutout loss. I've heard that Jordan Ross was suspended last week for whatever reason. Looks like he's still suspended because he's listed on the availability report. It's been a bad situation, and Chestnut has been a disaster. He did not read the room at all. Has tried to kind of come in and be the hard-nosed, old-school football coach. I'm going to scream at you in practice. It's fallen on deaf ears. Again, I just don't think he read the room at all. I don't think he's done anything to get the guys to buy into him, and obviously it's been bad. Like, I get, like, you've got to try and do something to, like, flip the switch with this squad, and then he went for the hard-nosed mentality, and it just hasn't really worked. But it's just been a disaster from really start to finish, and these last 3 weeks are very likely going to be, much like what we've witnessed the last couple of weeks, largely uncompetitive. Probably only gets worse if you see more guys end up leaving the program. It's a bad spot. And while I understand why Jay Norvell was fired, again, I keep coming back to the idea of maybe you should have just let him, if not finish the season, give him another month. If nothing else, like, you might have been able to keep the locker room intact a little bit better. And instead, the wheels have just fallen off, and it's ugly. I mean, CSU 6 captains at the beginning of the year. Braden Fowler-Nicolosi no longer on the team. Owen Long going strong. Wakalanji out for the year. Ellis has been in and out of the lineup with injuries. Jaquez Evans out for the year. Tanner Morley out for the year. Dupree was named a captain in the interim. He's now left the program. So 7 captains there of the 8 total you've had this season. Owen Long and Brousseau, I guess, are the only ones at this point who are still on the field. And Brousseau obviously was not a captain originally. It's just been a recipe for disaster. And I will say one thing that I've heard behind the scenes that's not been super great is that I've heard that the interim staff is telling high school recruits they're going to get the gig full time. I've heard some things about trying to pressure players into advocating for Summers to get the job too from him and Chestnut. It's just been a bad spot altogether. And yeah, thank God it's basketball season, right? That's really all I can say at this point. Thank God it's basketball season. We will talk about New Mexico. We'll talk about a crazy winning streak against the Lobos. We'll set the scene for the matchup on Saturday before we transition into hoops. Let me shout out a couple of our partners real quick, and we'll keep the party rolling. Brunt Workwear, one of our newest partners, has an awesome product for you to check out. The best-selling Marin work boot is not only built for the toughest job sites, it's built for basically everything. They're the perfect blend of stylish but practical. Whether it's rainy, muddy, standing water, your feet are going to stay dry. If you're in an oily workshop, to muddy farm fields, they're going to stand up to the conditions. The Marin 6-inch soft toe boot is built for workers across a variety of trades. Brunt knows they have the best boots on the planet, so they'll let you try any of their products, I should say, on the job. Choosing work boots used to mean sacrificing comfort or durability. Brunt thought that was BS. I do too. Eric Gerard grew up blue collar, started Brunt workwear after his friends in the trades kept telling him how the big brands had stopped listening and hadn't changed in 100 years. With temperatures dropping and the holidays coming up, it's time to treat yourself or the hardworking man in your life to real comfort. Skip the throwaway gifts, get him something built to last. Brunt Workwear, our listeners get $10 off the entire roster with the code DNVR at checkout. That's bruntworkwear.com. Use that code DNVR. Order today. Let them know you heard it here on the show. Hey, Colorado, did you know that we are in Dick's Sporting Goods? Stop by your local Dick's Sporting Goods for all the hottest apparel and footwear from top brands like Nike, Adidas Originals, Hoka. Again, they've got DNVR, so much more. Score the latest equipment for baseball, football, soccer, basketball, hockey, golf. They've got all your tailgating essentials. They've got everything you need. If you find a lower price, Dick's will match it with their best price guarantee. Get your gear fast with free curbside pickup at the nearest store or easy shipping from Dicks.com, because every season starts at Dick's. Andy says, is it me, or is anything short of a big splash name hire won't be enough of an adrenaline shot to revive the program? I mean, I understand that sentiment. I will say that winning cures all. And if you get a guy in here, even if he isn't the splash hire that's going to dominate, the headlines in the offseason or anything like that, you come in and you win, 8-9 games right off the bat, all of a sudden people are going to buy in. I mean, winning is always what sells. Winning is what gets the people going. And unfortunately, CSU has just not done enough of it. And they cannot afford to miss this hire. I've said it a million times, but this is easily the most substantial hire in CSU athletics history. I mean, it's now or never. Like, the train has probably already left the stop, if we're being honest. We've got a slim chance of being able to catch up to it at that first stop. But if you can't, man, it's just going to be too late. And we've seen the way that college football is heading, the gap between the haves and the have-nots. If you can't get it going now, if you can't be relevant and in the conversation, then it's going to be a really bad spot for this program after what's been committed financially in pursuit of competing at a higher rate in athletics. Over the last 16 years, one of the funniest things, despite CSU's struggles, despite all of the issues with the program, they have absolutely dominated the Lobos. The last loss was November 21st, 2009. For those that are keeping score at home, that is 5,837 days. 15 years, 11 months, 22 days. That is how long it has last been since CSU lost to New Mexico. I was a freshman at Bear Creek High School at the time. I was 14 years old, probably failing Spanish, probably struggling in algebra as well. I can barely remember that time period, if we're being honest. I mean, I couldn't even drive yet. That's how long it's been. There are kids who are in high school, close to graduation, who have never witnessed CSU lose to New Mexico. It is absolutely absurd to beat a conference opponent 13 straight times, 14, I suppose, if you count the no contest in 2020, which in my opinion should have been a forfeit. But the Rams have owned this series. They lead 45-25 all time, but again, 13 straight wins. The first matchup was November 28th, 1935. The last loss, November 21st, 2009. If you're curious, the number one song in the country the last time that New Mexico beat CSU, it was Empire State of Mind by Jay-Z and Alicia Keys. Filling out the rest of the top five, just again to give you an idea of how long it really has been. Fireflies by ALLCITY. What You Say, Jason Derulo. Replay, Iaz, and Need You Now by Lady Antebellum. Those were the top five songs on the Billboard Top 100. The highest grossing movie in the theaters at the time, Twilight, New Moon. I believe that was one of the sequels. And The Blind Side. 2012 was the number 3 movie. Remember that? Everybody thought the world was going to end because of the Mayan calendar or whatever. The top shows on TV, American Idol, Big Bang Theory, Undercover Boss, NCIS, and The Biggest Loser. It is insane how long it has been since CSU lost last to New Mexico. The Rams won the 2024 matchup 17-6 in Fort Collins. I actually thought it was the most impressive defensive performance that CSU had all last year. They gave up some chunk plays, they gave up some yardage, but they kept a red hot New Mexico offense out of the end zone, which was very impressive, especially considering the high level quarterback play they were getting from Devin Dampier at the time. Dual threat, one of my favorite college football players to watch these last couple of seasons. He's had a strong season at Utah outside of the injuries, I suppose. That's been kind of a tough break for the Utes at quarterback the last couple of years in general. Last year's game was weird, though. 2 big plays from the offense. Had like a 46-yard touchdown pass to Caleb Goody or something like that, and then an 82-yard punt return from Kobe Johnson, if I remember correctly. I was going through those before today's show. New Mexico moved the ball pretty well between the 20s, but had some turnovers, and the Rams just did a good job of bending and not breaking, grinding out a 17-6 win. That or San Jose State, probably the most quality wins that CSU had on the schedule last year. But this is obviously a very different looking New Mexico team than who CSU dealt with last season. They've had a ton of change. Basically, the entire roster transferred out, which was really a tough break for Lobos fans. They've had as bad of luck as anybody on basketball and football the last couple of years when it comes to portal and seeing top guys. You lose Donovan Dent to UCLA. You lose JT Toppin to New Mexico. I mean, those are 2 of the top 20 players in college basketball. And on the football side, you finally get it going. You finally find some hope under Bronco Mendenhall, and it results in a 5-7 season where you don't even make a bowl game. And then Dampier goes to Utah. Mendenhall leaves for Utah State. Eli Sanders, their star running back, went to USC. They lost Wysong, their solid receiver. I think he ended up at Arizona, if I remember correctly. Another couple of guys ended up at Utah with Dampier. I mean, they saw everybody head for the doors, and for the Rams to, for the Lobos to be as competitive as they have been this season, it's been pretty impressive. And I think it gives you some hope if you're a CSU fan that if you do make the right hire, you can hit the ground running. Now, Eck, I think, was somewhat of a unique situation. He was able to bring a quarterback with him, signed a ton of FCS All-Stars, essentially, and you wondered, would it translate? It has. They have been highly competitive. They've been a really balanced football team. They run the ball with consistency. They've had success throwing the ball. Jack Lane, again, Idaho transfer, has been good. And they're 6-3 on the year. I mean, they had a great start. Obviously, beating UCLA was the highlight moment. UCLA is not that good of a football team, but still, to win that game for this program, especially coming off of such a tough offseason, it was evident from the beginning that this New Mexico team, with how they hung, against teams like Michigan and UCLA, were going to be able to compete this season. Dropped a couple of games to begin league play, lost to Boise State in a competitive game, lost to San Jose State. That's a game I'm sure they wish that they could have back, but they have won 3 straight. Since then, they do have a shot at the league title, depending on what happens here. Would need some help. You need Boise to drop another game. Probably would have to win out, but they do play San Diego State at the end of the year, so there's an opportunity there to potentially play their way into it. Again, carried by a couple of really strong FCS transfers. I was intrigued by Scott Trey Humphrey coming into the year, but I mean, Jackson Eck at linebacker has been a stud. It's been kind of cool to see the resurgence of Tavion Combs. If you remember back, he was kind of the star of New Mexico football, and in the Danny Gonzalez era has been really injury riddled over the course of his career, and it's a shame because he's a really exciting player when he's out on the field. I'm not sure how old the guy is at this point. It's like his 6th or 7th season of college football. Lots of people, go to college for 7 years, but it's been one of the more fun storylines in college football. And as much as it's going to sting for CSU fans to likely see that streak come to an end, I think there's at least a part of us, at least there is for me, that can feel happy for New Mexico. Obviously, you want to see the Rams find a way to show up for this game. And it would be objectively hilarious if, after everything CSU's been through this year, they found a way to keep that winning streak going over New Mexico. It truly did become one of those odd inevitabilities in life, death taxes and CSU over UNM. But I've enjoyed watching them. Just being real with you guys, I think it's been a cool storyline. And if they do happen to roll CSU this weekend, it would be kind of cool to see them find a way to go on and play their way into the conference title game, because it has been one of the more unique storylines. And if I'm CSU, I would love to be able to poach Eck from New Mexico. He would be one of my top choices for the job. I know that the in-conference move has soured for some folks based on how Norvell played out. I've argued that that's not how you can operate as a school. Like, just because you did something and it didn't work out doesn't mean you can't ever go that route again. By that logic, you can't ever hire another, Power 4 offensive coordinator. You also can't hire a retread. So who can you hire? You can't hire an NFL assistant. It didn't work out under Fairchild. You'd really be limiting your pool of candidates if you put those restraints on. I think Eck has an energy that is infectious. I think he has revitalize that community in a major way. I think he's been at places that don't traditionally have that support that's just going to show up week in and week out, and he has had to learn how to be a man of the community and generate that support within your community and getting people to buy into your program. You see some of the social media stuff they do at New Mexico, it's hilarious. And then obviously just the fact that this team in year one is 6-3 after all of the moving pieces, after seeing all of their key players from last year hit the portal. It's really, really impressive. And he has just got an energy to him that I think would be great going into the Pac-12. I think he is the type of coach that, at the podium is going to kill it, but is also going to be competitive enough on the field to, back it up. It's one thing to kill a press conference. You've then got to go out and back it up on the field. And he has done that every step of the way. Aaron says, infectious energy with an extra emphasis on the Eck. There's just something about the guy that is really entertaining. He's kind of got some Mike Leach characteristics to him where you never quite know what he's going to do. You never know what pop culture reference or tangent he's going to go on, but you want to listen to him. And I think with where the fans are at right now on the CSU side of things, getting that type of guy to come in and bring a little juice back, bring a little excitement back to the people, it would be a really intriguing move to me. And I know that his buyout is on the higher side of things, a couple million. I know that he's gone on record in saying that the new Pac-12 is not super intriguing to him. Politically, you kind of have to say that if you're at New Mexico, considering they were one of the schools that was left behind in all of this. But you certainly got to be sniffing around and you've got to be talking to his agent and thinking like, well, what would it take theoretically to get you on Fort Collins? Because you look at the campus, and I've got a lot of love for New Mexico and Albuquerque. I honestly kind of wish they were going to be in the Pac-12, but the facilities are night and day. I mean, CSU, it's not even a conversation. It's like comparing a poor high school to one of the top Group 4 schools. Again, that only comes to facilities. I would think he would at least hear CSU out. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out on Saturday. It's going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out these next couple of weeks with the coaching search. Maybe Eck is content at New Mexico. He does have support, and he thinks, I'll just wait out Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. If he has back-to-back 8+ win seasons at New Mexico, he's probably going to have his pick of the litter. But really interesting dynamic with this CSU UNM matchup, given the history, given the last 15 years, and then given everything that's happened the last couple of years with, the coaching carousel and CSU having already poached an in-conference coach and New Mexico having a history of having to see their guys, walk out the door. they're going to be a little bit defensive. Lobo fans are about all this, and I would be too. I mean, how annoying would it be if year after year you had to sit and listen to, the vultures want to, pick through you, but it just kind of is what it is. This is modern college football. I think he is one of the coaches on the rise, and this is a big, big game coming up on Saturday. Keep the questions, comments, etc. rolling in the Toyota chat. If I don't get to it right away, we can always come back at the end of the show. Let me shout out a couple of our other awesome partners, and then we'll keep this party rolling. All right, if you can't tell, I am stoked for the NHL to be back. I am on the Avs side of things. I'm on pre- and post-game shows for every home game for the Avs this season. I'm on some of their other, just weekly podcasts as well, depending on the schedule with football and hoops. There's nothing better, though, than being in the arena at Ball Arena for a big-time Avs home game. The energy is unreal. It's as much raw energy, like just pure passion, sound, noise creation from the folks in the stands, not a bunch of, phony noise being pumped in, a bunch of, beats and stuff like that as any sporting experience that I've had, especially in the playoffs. It's surreal. And Game Time is giving you the best deals, the cheapest way to get into those awesome games. Game Time is a really great app. It's easy to use. I love how user-friendly it is. They've got a ton of great offers, zone deals. They've got ways to save you money constantly. You know that the tickets you are getting are 100% authentic and on time. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use that code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code DNVR for $20 off. Tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, Toyota's built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails, whether you are hauling the weight of the world, there is a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the Tacoma. Check out the Land Cruiser. Toyota offers 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive like the Epic 4Runner. They also offer more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from. Check out the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. Andy says, imagine we hire another in-conference coach that blows us out, then immediately turns around and leaves for CSU. I'm for it. LOL. That would be objectively hilarious. we pulled another, Norvell circa 2021. You just get your teeth kicked in and you say, you want to know what? That guy's pretty good. Why don't you come over here on this side of things? Bob says, seems like every school has figured out how to win some games with a new coach in the system. Did I mention Wyoming? TALP. If this is the most important coaching hire opportunity CSU has had, then we need to go all in on a crazy name and proven coach instead of something safe. It's a tough balance to strike, right? Like you want to move the needle. You want to be relevant. You want to be talked about. You also just need to win at some point, because flash and headlines and all of that only goes so far. And that's where I worry of if you're just chasing a big name for the sake of a big name, then you might end up with the wrong fit, and the right fit is so important. Just look at Nico Medved and Ali Farokhmanesh, what they're doing on the hoop side of things. Those weren't flashy, names, especially when they came in the first time, but they were the right fit at the right time. And that is what CSU needs to do here. The tough thing is there weren't really any expectations when Medved came in. The expectation, realistic or fair or not, based on what CSU commits to football, is going to be to win, and to win now. And there is some baggage that comes along with that, because we are so scorned after 2 decades of largely being irrelevant and continually underperforming. And until someone is able to change that vibe, the minute you have a sluggish September, the Ram life tendencies they set in, and that's going to be a tough thing for whoever comes in to offset that, because at this point there's just such a large sample size of this program letting us down that it's really hard to realistically. It's hard to look at the situation with a straight face and be like, yeah, it's going to be different this time around. We're going to nail it. Going to absolutely nail it. I hope so. God, I hope so. I'm so tired of covering losing teams and doing the therapy session with y'all and having to be, Dr. Phil of the CSU Rams community. But the history has me anxious. I guess I'll say that. I do think that this is the most attractive the gig has been. I think this is the best that CSU has been in a position of institutional alignment. That is a really big factor in all this as well. If you can have a good coach, but if you don't have administrators that are committed to doing what it takes to remaining relevant in athletics, you're going to fall behind. And I think that's one of the great things about CSU right now. Not only do you have the facilities, you don't need to, come in and, beg to get a practice facility built or a practice field or, a new stadium. You've got all that in place. And you've got a president and an athletic director who are unapologetic in their pursuit of greatness. And we'll see how it plays out in the end. But I do like, as anxious and as much as the history has worn me down and another long season has me kind of leaning into the woe is me, I do think that logically it is an attractive job based on what CSU is willing to spend on football, based on the administrators being willing to push all their chips in the center of the table. And we'll see kind of where that lands and who they end up with in the end. But I wish we could fast forward to December at this point, because these last 3 games just don't feel like they have a whole lot of meaning. And especially if we're going to now see some of the top guys start to walk away, it's just going to be borderline unwatchable. But you never know. Crazier things have happened in college football. It would be, again, objectively hilarious if nothing else, CSU kept the winning streak over New Mexico going. I would still love to see the Rams beat Air Force in the last Mountain West game. I'm sure they'll get beat pretty bad by Boise, even with a backup quarterback. That's just a tough environment. But we'll see. If you can get anything going with the passing game, I wouldn't expect it at this point. Maybe you could have a monster Rocky Beers performance. Maybe Justin Marshall goes off now that Dupree's no longer in the mix. There is a path to that, but this New Mexico defense, they haven't been like dominant, but they've been solid. They get off the field pretty well. They're good against the run. There's not a lot on paper that leads me to think this game is going to be anything other than a double-digit loss. If you were to find a way to swing things, I think it would have to be a lot of explosives, big plays, kick returns, that type of stuff. Obviously, you'd have to win the turnover margin. You're probably dependent on New Mexico shooting themselves in the foot, but they're just a better coached, better disciplined team than CSU, being real with you guys. And I think it might be kind of a long game on Saturday, and I think the Lobos might exercise some demons that have been building up with this losing streak over the last 16 years. The Rams have probably had it coming from this team, and it feels like we're gonna have to pay the piper this weekend. But again, we shall see. That's about all I have to say on the football side of things. I've honestly already spent more time on this show talking football than I intended to. So let's pivot over to the basketball side of things. Let's bring the vibes back up. Let's talk about a program that doesn't have to be hypothetically competitive, is competitive right here, right now, has another shot to be in the mix in the Mountain West, potentially make a 4th NCAA tournament in 5 years. This team is rolling offensively. In my preseason predictions, I mentioned that I felt like this team would be pretty good, and because of that, I was willing to say that they would score 100 points at some point this season, maybe even more than once. As good as they were last year, they didn't do that. Scoring 90 plus in your first 3 games, not against phenomenal defenses by any means, don't get me wrong there. But for this team with as many new pieces as they have, you've got 9 guys in the rotation that weren't part of the NCAA tournament team. A couple of guys, Darnez, Slater, McConan, they were on the roster technically, but they weren't on the floor. They weren't, part of the action. For a team with this many new pieces to be as efficient as they are, their effective field goal percentage is top 10 in the country. They're kind of a modern analytical dream, to be honest, with the shots that they choose to take. It's basically exclusively open threes or high quality looks within 5 to 8 feet of the rim. I mean, they've missed some layups, honestly, in that last game. This could have been a bigger blowout than it was. CSU probably could have covered if they would have been a little bit better on layups in that game. But the decision making has been great, and that's not to say that you can't shoot mid range shots in game. I mean, Ali was joking the other day, like obviously an Isaiah Stevens type, shoot from wherever you want. A mid range for him is basically a layup, but I think that they have a really good understanding of what you are trying to get in this offense. And the flow has been great. The pace, the unselfishness, you look at, the assist to field goal ratio. It's just been really encouraging for a team with so many new pieces. And, I was intrigued by some of these guys coming into the year. I felt like Josh Pasquarelli was underrated, one of the more significant additions in the Mountain West. And God, he looked good in this one. 22 points, 8 of 17 from the floor, 6 of 13 from 3-point in 34 minutes. When he gets it going, it's just really tough to defend. That release is really quick. And what I like about him is a couple times a night, just to keep you honest, he'll put it on the floor and he'll attack. And he's got, nice finesse in the paint there, has shown the ability to get, kind of a nice little runner there in the paint. He's displayed some good touch there as well. He has been really exciting out of the gate. I would think out of all the transfers, he's probably been the most consistently impressive on the offensive side of things. But Rechsteiner, who's been a streaky scorer historically, he shot the ball with confidence. 5 of 11 from the floor, 3 of 9 from 3-point, maybe jacked up 1 or 2 too many from deep. But I feel like his mindset, his mentality have been solid, especially for somebody who's probably not really a natural point guard. I think in a perfect world, he's more of a 2 guard. And I would say that McIver is probably your most natural facilitator. And I do think there's a world in which his role just grows and grows, and maybe he even takes over the starting point guard role at some point this season, with as well as Rechsteiner is playing right now. Maybe not. And then that'd be fine too. Whether he's starting or whether he's coming off of the bench, he's going to play a substantial role. But I think you got to see in this one why the staff is so excited about his potential. Only 5 points, only 1 of 4 from the floor, but he got to the line. He had 6 assists, which was second on the team. He had a steal. He had a block. Defensively, he might already be the best on the team. I think he's in the conversation. Kerry Booth, him, Jace Butler is really solid defensively. I've been impressed by him, and I thought he looked really good in the 93-79 win over Cal Poly as well. Career high 13 points from Jace, 4 of 7 from the floor, 2 of 4 from deep. He's another guy who's got a really good looking jump shot. Him and Pasquarelli, it's just mechanically very sound. Had a 3-point play at one point, 3-3 at the line. You love that. But he did a little bit of everything in this game. He had 5 rebounds. He had 3 assists. Again, he defended at a high level. I felt like Cal Poly, they play a very fast-paced, up-tempo offense. They're going to jack up a ton of threes. Both teams shot 36 threes in this one. And I mean, Cal Poly hit 14 of them, 39% from 3-point. I did feel like defensively early on, maybe they gave up a couple of looks that were far too open, did a better job of getting hands and faces and contesting looks as the game went on. They just hit some good shots at some point. But the Rams do have to be better defensively, and I think that's going to be a big key for CSU is how do you balance offense versus defense with this roster? I mean, I think offensively you've got some of your best guys on the floor right now, probably your most developed, I would say. Maybe not necessarily ceiling-wise, but development-wise, as of right now, you're probably starting your best 5 with the caveat that Bemba has been injured and not playing. But I think Butler, again, and McIver are 2 of your better defenders, so I'd like to see them, maybe getting an increased role, especially if CSU is continually giving up, 10-plus threes. Those guys are just really solid around the perimeter. But you don't want to give up, the offense. And it's going to be a battle for playing time this year, and that's good for the team. Like if you're Jace Butler, if you're McIver, that gives you incentive to make sure that you're making the most of your looks offensively. You're getting quality looks, and you're knocking them down. If you're Rex Steiner, if you're Pasquarelli, yeah, you're shooting the three ball at a really high clip right now. But if you're a defensive liability, instead of 30 minutes a night, it might be more like 20, 22 a night. And there's no greater incentive than having a plethora of minutes to be able to distribute amongst a young roster. And I think that's what's going to be fun. I think that's what's going to keep everybody really hungry this season, is just the fact that there were a lot of minutes on the table coming in. And really, I would say up until you get into the league slate, like this rotation is far from being firmly established. And all of these guys have a chance to carve out their own path to playing time, to establish a role on this team. And the versatility that they have with this group gives you a lot of different options. I think you saw some of that the other night after Jorgensen and Joppa got into foul trouble, being able to go small and put Booth as a 5 essentially. And, Jevin and Augie and some of these guys, like they allow you some versatility. And when you do go smaller, I think one of the strengths of the team is the depth of the front court and the experience you return there. I've talked a lot about the continuity, but when you do go smaller, that gives you an opportunity to lean on some of those guard heavy lineups. And I do think that maybe makes CSU a little bit better against the 3-point shot. Paint defense kind of TBD. We'll see how they handle all that. But this team's intriguing. And if they can figure it out defensively with a little bit more consistency, they're going to get good looks offensively. Sure, there'll just be some nights where the shots aren't falling, where you're just a little bit of a struggle on that side of the ball. But defense, rebounding, those travel, and defense and rebounding were a significant part of what made CSU so dangerous and consistent last year at the end of the season. It's what allowed them to nearly make the Sweet 16. If this team can jump a level or two defensively with what they're already doing offensively, and they're really only scratched the surface. Like they still have some sloppy turnovers. Again, they blew some layups. I mean, they could have scored 105 points if they, executed to their full capability. I think this team they have a chance to be quite good in the Mountain West. And I'm starting to think more and more that an NCAA tournament is more realistic than maybe I had anticipated coming in, where it felt like it was, if it happens, that'd be incredible, but I don't necessarily expect it. And now I'm getting to more of a place where, I don't know, I think they're going to be a top 3 or 4 team in the league. Why shouldn't they make the tournament? We're going to keep talking hoops. We'll get an updated Mountain West basketball power ranking. One last break for our awesome partners, and we'll get into that. Whether you need snapbacks, truckers, fitteds, beanies, or tees, Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style. If you're looking for some gear to make your brand stand apart from the crowd, Branded Bills has you covered with the best custom headwear. I've got a couple of options on the set here. I rock my camo one all the time. I see a lot of Branded Bills hats on campus these days. It's not surprising. They have the best custom headwear. It is comfy. It's a nice balance of athletic wear. It's got like the moisture wicking material, but it still looks good enough that you could wear it, with like a polo and go to dinner or something like that. Start your order, and their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel that you need. Again, they have that partnership with Colorado State as part of their on-campus collection. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. I also encourage you to choose chill. Our friends at Coors Light, they have been telling you to choose chill for a while now. It's been a pretty long campaign, and it's a good campaign because we can all relate to it, right? Life gets hectic, it gets stressful, it gets chaotic, and in those moments, it's all about how you respond. How do you choose to respond to adversity? I'm not trying to sound like your life coach, but I mean, I think we all get tested on a daily basis, and it's about how we handle those moments of high stress. Do the little things, get some exercise, take some deep breaths, go on a walk. When you're chilling, when you're kicked back, maybe you have some company over, crack open an ice cold Coors Light. It's mountain cold refreshment. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado beer. Brad says, any idea why we are not seeing more of McConan in the non-con? The path to playing time is tough, man. I think athletically he is pretty surreal. You know, if he could put it all together, he's a guy who's very, very intriguing. He's got a lot of room to grow, especially, ball handling and some of that type of stuff. But that's the burden, of this situation, is that there are guys who very realistically could play larger roles and if we're being real, might end up transferring and going on to play a bigger role elsewhere. And then, you look back, hindsight's always 2020. God, what could have been? That's just kind of the reality of modern college basketball. And I do think, there's a potential we see a little bit more of him. I think of the two, Slater is probably a little bit more refined offensively. There's also probably more of a need just based on the fact that Slater can kind of facilitate for you, though. If, McIver assumes a larger role, it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with his minutes and how that shapes out, especially if Jace Butler ends up, playing a bigger and bigger role over the course of the year. He's a guy I'm really, really excited about. I think Butler can be a Jalen Lake type, a guy who's a six man early on in his career, just kind of does the little things well. And then, quietly, but surely becomes a pretty integral piece of the rotation, hopefully for a multi-year stretch, because he's got a really good looking jump shot. I love what he brings to the table defensively. Again, I think he's really only scratched the surface. And I think you could say that about a lot of this roster. I think McIver still has a lot of room to grow offensively. I think you're going to see Augie become more and more of a factor within the offense. He got into some foul trouble in this game the other night, which was tough. Again, the front court in general, all three of those guys were in foul trouble, but CSU able to battle it out. I did think that was encouraging, all things considered. Would prefer to not be in foul trouble, obviously, but it's going to happen. How do you respond during those moments? Felt like the Rams did a good job of not allowing things to spiral by leaning on some of those young guards and giving them an opportunity and trusting in them to do the right thing. And to their credit, they did. And I think you've got to credit a guy like Kerry Booth for being able to stay on the floor in this game. The rotation is very much still in flux. And as Aaron is saying in the Toyota chat, how it will all come together is probably the biggest question that we have at this moment. And that is both exciting. It's also a challenge for the staff, not just from like a strategic standpoint and in trying to maximize your winning potential from a basketball standpoint, like actually on the floor, but also trying to deal with the emotions of having, this many guys who all know they're capable of playing, but are going to have to sacrifice. And the buy-in / defensive prowess and like how much they're able to make a leap on that side is ultimately going to dictate how far this team goes. And I think they've found a lot of good fits from my experience at this point, just being around these guys a little bit and getting to know some of these new players. It feels very much like what we have seen with the program over the last 5+ years. I've talked about it so much, but one of the things that's made CSU so fun is not only have they been good, like they play high level basketball night to night, have been a very entertaining, fan friendly product, but they've also done it with a lot of really good dudes who have been fun to cover, who represent the program with dignity and class. And you couldn't really ask for much more than that. David Roddy, the Isaiah Stevens of the world, Nate Clifford. It's just been really cool to see. I think they've got a lot of good guys in this bunch too. How does everything come together? How does your offensive game travel? I do think that is going to be a question. We'll have our first opportunity on Sunday to see. I will be at the Broncos game on Sunday, and then I've got Avs coverage, so I might be a little bit delayed on that one. But I am looking forward to it. I'm interested to see how CSU handles this test against Loyola, who hasn't looked quite as good as I maybe expected coming into the year. Still, though, a true road environment for the first time. If you're not hitting shots, what is your effort level like defensively? How are you on the glass? They've been really good there. these first couple of games. It's an intriguing test, but if you can win this one, now all of a sudden you're starting to get greedy and being like, well, why couldn't they potentially run the slate in the non-con? I mean, CU is going to be a tough game. You know, the MTE is going to be tough depending on what matchups you get. You got to get through Virginia Tech to have a shot at likely St. Mary's, but we shall see. But there's a path to this team making a little bit of noise and really getting some momentum going into the league slate. I'm having a lot of fun seeing these guys try and put it together. Pasquarelli's a dog. I liked that the team showed a little bit of FU energy too. You know, Cal Poly, I don't remember which kid it was. He's getting a little spunky there, trying to stir some stuff up a couple of different times too. Had Joppa heated, had JoJo heated more than once. I like that the Rams refused to get punked in that situation. For a young team, they're here for the moment, man. They're not scared, and I like that. You're gonna need that edge come conference play. You know, when you're playing the San Diego States and Nevadas of the world, when you're going into, you know, Logan, Utah, and you're having to deal with that hostile crowd. It's encouraging to see not just the toughness, but the togetherness of the team. Like, guys are standing up for themselves. What we're seeing, you know, them stand up for each other. I've been really intrigued by just how quickly the pieces have seemed to come together with this team. And I still think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think there's another level 2 or 3 that this group is capable of potentially making. Whether they do it or not, we shall see. But it has been really encouraging at this stage of the year. And I think they're very firmly a top 3 team in the Mountain West. So with that in mind, before we get out of here, let's give an updated Mountain West Hoops power ranking. Air Force 12, Fresno State 11. I highly doubt those teams will move at any point this year, but I said that about Nevada on the football side, and then, you know, CSU laid an egg in the border war so bad that we had to make a point. But Air Force 12, Fresno 11, San Jose State 10. Again, that's probably going to be pretty consistently the case, although San Jose State under Tim Miles, they tend to play up. And UNLV, who I have at 9, tends to play down to their competition. Nobody does less with more than the UNLV Rebels basketball program. Wyoming, deceptively kind of frisky. Scored 90 plus in 3 straight games. They're sharing the ball. They've been good on the glass. I think Wyoming is much improved this year. I've got them at 8. I've got Grand Canyon at 7. Feels like I probably overestimated them a little bit in the preseason, but we shall see. 6 through 4 are pretty interchangeable in my estimation. I've got Nevada 6, New Mexico 5, Boise State 4. I know Boise State lost to Hawaii Pacific. I do feel like, if I'm being genuine, that was probably more of a fluky outcome. It was enough that we had to drop them. You know, we dropped them all the way to 7 last week, but they have responded well in their last 2 showings. Came into the year feeling like they were a top 3 team in the league. I feel like that's still probably closer to who they are than what that D2 performance showed. But, you know, the game's got to count. The results do have to count for something. I've got CSU at 3, just knocking on the door of Utah State. I do think Utah State gets a slight edge just because that win over VCU was one of the better non-conference wins that the league has to this point. And then obviously San Diego State comes in at the top. So rapid fire: SDSU 1, Utah State 2, CSU 3, Boise 4, UNM 5, Nevada 6, GCU 7, Wyoming 8, UNLV 9, San Jose State 10, Fresno State 11, Air Force 12. That is our updated Mountain West power ranking. We will see where we're at a week from now. Just kind of some final thoughts before we get out of here. I will talk more about the media deal on Monday. The Pac-12 announced USA as a media partner. I want to have a chance to kind of go through some of the fine details. I will say my instant reaction: it's an accessible channel on a basic cable package. They have an incentive to prioritize the league because they don't have a ton of other sports outside of the Premier League. They do a good job with the Premier League and the Olympics, so I would assume that they would be able to handle the Pac-12. It should be a pretty quality process, although I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work out. I imagine they'll go to the Pac-12 studios, not NBC. That's a whole side tangent, but I think the general exposure is really important for the Pac-12. They need visibility. They need to be on linear TV, and they've done a good job with that. You know, I saw some people saying like, "Oh, ESPN's on the deal. That sucks." I'm like, "Why?" So you can get delegated to being on ESPN Plus for more than half your schedule, especially like basketball and stuff like that. I like the idea of being on the CW and USA, and just knowing that all our games are going to be easily accessible on TV, and you're not going to have to worry about 8 million games in front and delayed start times, and we're going to know our kickoff times in months in advance instead of the 12 days out. We still don't know what time the Boise game is going to kick off. That's one of the most annoying elements of the current media deal. Obviously, the numbers, the bottom line is going to be a big factor in how all of this is graded. I think at minimum, you should double your current TV deal. I would love to see them get closer to 10 million a year. We'll see what happens with all of that. But I like the direction of the media rights deal. I'll say that. Do we have anything starred in the Toyota chat? Andy says, would it be beneficial to announce a hire before the end of the year? Wouldn't it be disadvantaged to further wait? Yes, and I think we will. I think we will see the head coach hired before the regular season finale, or maybe just shortly after. But yes, I think like by conference championship week at the very latest, I would like to see this decision made, because you've got to get the ground running here. But obviously you have to be thorough with your search as well, and that's kind of a tough balance. Bob says, is there any chatter on who they're interviewing, who's interested, etc.? Again, I can tell you Cordell Stewart, not a viable candidate. I have heard there was interest in Egg. I've heard there's interest in Colin Klein. Don't know if there's been dialogue back and forth there yet. Canzano mentioned Tim Plow. He wouldn't move the needle a ton for me, but he does make sense. Him, Polasek, Vigan, all those FCS rising stars. But that's where we're at right now. So shout out to everybody for rocking with us on a Friday. I really appreciate you guys tuning in with us, especially during the hard times. Aaron, Joey, some of y'all, TALP, still not entirely sure if that's Talp or what to pronounce it as. Shout out to all you guys. Bob, there was a really active Toyota chat today, and that was always fun for me. Much love to our super producer, Alyssa. We'll be live Monday talking about the New Mexico game, talking hoops, talking media deal, and more. Thank you for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Much love, y'all. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.